Despite the entry into force of the ceasefire in Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister threatens to continue the aggressions. Haiti received another 217 police officers from Kenya despite the lack of results shown by the contingents deployed in the fight against violence by criminal groups. And Venezuela received displaced Colombians after clashes between the ELN and dissidents of the FARC's 33rd Front in Catatumbo. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. More than 4,000 truckloads of humanitarian aid has begun to enter the Gaza Strip through the Rafah border crossing in Egypt. The United Nations Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East reported that the trucks are loaded with food, drinking water, medical supplies, hygiene products, and tents, while hundreds more remain in the border area waiting authorization to cross. According to the truce agreement, some 600 trucks of aid are expected to enter Gaza daily, including 50 with fuel. On the other hand, Egyptian authorities have reportedly put on alert hospitals and medical teams to receive the wounded and sick coming from Gaza during the ceasefire. Meanwhile, Gazans celebrate the agreement between Hamas and Israel, which came into force on Sunday after 15 months of Zionist genocide in the region. In the streets of the devastated city of Gaza, the citizens have expressed their hope to move forward and that the Israeli troops will finally stop the bombardments. Gazans were also happy to be reunited with their relatives retained by the occupation troops in the framework of their illegal raids carried out since October 2023. However, despite the entry into force of the ceasefire in Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister threatens to continue the aggressions. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that the truce will not begin until he receives the list of hostages to be released. Meanwhile, the Israeli army has continued its attacks, with a recent bombing that left at least 3 dead in Gaza. Meanwhile, Hamas has affirmed its commitment to the ceasefire, justifying the delay in handing over the names for technical reasons. The ceasefire agreement provides for an initial exchange of 33 Israeli hostages for 90 Palestinian prisoners, but the situation remains critical. And Israel unilaterally violated the ceasefire in Gaza and within minutes of its entry into force killed 12 Palestinians. In this sense, Israel used the delay with lists of hostages to be handed over by the Hamas resistance movement as an excuse for this new crime. In addition to the fatalities, the genocide government bombardment left more than 25 wounded, all of them civilians returning to the ruins of their homes with the little they had. Minutes later, the Palestinian resistance reported that at 4 p.m. local time, 3 women held in since October 7th will be released. They are Rumi Jonin, Emily Damari, and Doron Ban. On Saturday night, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel took to his X account to express his support for the people of Palestine. The president expressed, with Palestinian lights and symbols, the world is watching the ceasefire in Gaza. All sensitive and peace-loving people are waiting for a serious commitment to end the attempt to exterminate a people which has been going on for more than 75 years. In other news, in Nigeria, more than 60 people were killed in an explosion that occurred after a fuel tanker overturned in Niger State. Authorities detailed that the accident occurred because the driver lost control of the transport unit, causing the vehicle to overturn. Also, part of the victims died in a subsequent explosion as a result of the rollover while they were on their way to pick up the spilled fuel. It was also reported that the fire left an undetermined number of people injured as it reached vehicles, motorcycles, and stores that were near the place of the incident. State Governor Mohamed Umar Ubago expressed his shock at the incident and conveyed his condolences to the families and friends of the victims. We now have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Haiti received another 217 police officers from Kenya despite the lack of resolve shown by the contingents deployed in the fight against violence by criminal groups. With the mediation of the United States, Canada, the Organization of American States, and the United Nations, more than 4 countries have sent security agents and weapons to the Caribbean nation. However, violent criminal groups continue to gain ground, especially in Port-au-Prince, the country's capital. With the addition of this contingent, the African mission exceeds 600 agents deployed in Haiti, while displacement, sexual violence, and hunger continue to increase. And Venezuela received displaced Colombians after clashes between the ELN and dissidents of the FARC's 33rd Front in Catatumbo, north of Santander. The Venezuelan government expressed its solidarity with the people of Colombia and activated a mechanism to receive and assist those displaced by the violence of paramilitary armed groups. According to official information, the latest clashes has left at least 30 civilians dead, about 20 kidnapped, and dozens wounded. Furthermore, Colombia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Luis Gilberto Murillo, has warned that the influx of Colombian citizens fleeing violence in the Catatumbo region to Venezuela could increase significantly in the coming hours.
The regional authorities are there preparing. 60 people have already arrived in some of these border towns, and it seems that the number is going to increase. UNHCR is already responding. The ambassador has already contacted them. I have instructed the ambassador to observe the situation and, if necessary, our consul in Venezuela to move to the area.
In Ecuador, Juan Francisco Roman, Secretary General of the Republic, informed that Veronica Abad, Vice President of the country, will travel to Turkey as part of the diplomatic task assigned by President Daniel Noboa. Secretary General first stated that this measure was taken to ensure that there are no limitations on Abad's performance of her duties. The government's decision to send the Vice President to Turkey is a response to the consultation made by Abad regarding Executive Decree 490, which reinstated her in her position. In addition to this, it was learned that the executive will also be paid the unpaid salary since November 9, 2024, when she was suspended from her functions for 150 days. And in the interior of the state of Sao Paulo, the landless rural workers movement held a demonstration to demand justice for the murder of its members. Details in the following report.
The landless movement marches again, as it has done throughout its 40 years, to demand agrarian reform, life, and justice. In this case, for the assassination of 2 farmers and leaders of the movement.
Today, we are giving an answer to the violent people who assassinated workers who fight for the land, for nature, for agroecology. We are gathered here to demonstrate that together we will win this battle.
Valdir Nascimento and Gleison Barbosa were shot and killed by about 25 armed men on the night of Friday, January 9th, during an invasion in the Olga Benario settlement. 2 other people are still hospitalized in serious condition.
We demand that their fight be present all the time, and the continuation of the fight they had in the pursuit of improvement, of quality of life, of a social project of solidarity, and the right to land, which is the right of all of us, the working class people.
The movement held a 7th-day mass with various religious leaders to remember the victims.
We have reference in some commitments with some peoples, and that gives us legitimacy to fight for the land together with some comrades, because they are different struggles, but they have only one objective: the conjunction of justice, peace, and love.
The regularized settlement for agrarian reform is located near the urban area of the municipality of Tremembe, in the interior of Sao Paulo. The movement assures that there are real estate interests behind the crime.
That night, the partners of the Olga Benario settlement gathered to defend a lot that was being marketed in an irregular manner, given that in the agrarian reform and in the Institute of Agrarian Reform, the lots are not for commercialization. Agrarian reform land is public land and is not a commodity for sale.
Delays in the institutions were the focus of criticism. The invasion against the settlement took place on an empty 5,000 square meter lot with access to the community's water source. In March 2013, the movement asked the Agrarian Reform Institute to allocate the land to landless families, but there were still no answers.
Such barbaric violence, such violence is unacceptable. We were with the Supreme Court Judge, Lewandowski, and he committed to put federal police and intelligence into the farm violence programs to establish all the warnings against any threat and that threat can be managed to prevent and give peace to those who fight for land reform.
In addition, the movement assures that the scenario of conflict is being strengthened by speculation over the delivery of land titles within agrarian reform settlements. A measure implemented during the government of Jair Bolsonaro that reopens the delivery of territories to the market.
Ignacio Lemos y Julia Nassif para TeleSUR.
In Paraguay, several fires have been raging for weeks. In the last few hours, the fire in Asunción, the country's capital, consumed more than 40 hectares. Hundreds of families have been evacuated from houses near the Paraguay River in the Bahia Blanca area. There, the flames are advancing dangerously from a fire that, according to local authorities, has 3 sources of ignition. The fire, besides forcing the evacuation and affecting several firefighters, has spread to the ecological reserve Banco San Miguel, due to the high temperatures and the change in wind direction. Authorities have confirmed that at least 2 people have been arrested for the incident, confirming also that it was intentionally provoked. We now have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Italy, the health ministry warned that more than 1,400 cases of COVID-19 and 44 deaths from the disease have been reported. The Italian health ministry reported in its latest COVID-19 report that 54,973 tests for the presence of the coronavirus were carried out, a figure higher than the 42,025 carried out between January 2nd and the 8th, but the positive rate fell from 3.7 to 2.7%. The Department of Health also said that 1,208 people are still hospitalized for COVID-19 in general wards, while 39 are in intensive care. The Prime Minister of Hungary warned that Europe is approaching a new energy crisis due to the interruption of gas transit through Ukraine and the sanctions imposed by the United States on Russian oil and gas companies. According to Premier Viktor Orban, recent events in Europe's energy supply are alarming as Ukraine has blocked a pipeline supplying gas to Hungary, while the U.S. administration has introduced sanctions that have driven up energy prices. In this regard, the actions have disrupted supplies to Austria, Italy, and Central Europe, spurring regional efforts to minimize the impact. And South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol became the country's first sitting president to be formally arrested after a court issued a warrant Sunday to detain him for an extended period over his botched martial law bid last month. The court approved the arrest warrant, citing sufficient proof for the charges and the risk of evidence tampering. The decision means that investigators can keep Yoon in custody for up to 20 days, including the days he has already spent at a detention center following his apprehension at his residence in Seoul. On Wednesday, the ruling led to violent protests by hundreds of angry supporters who stormed the court building, smashed windows, and broke in with riot police trying to keep them at bay. In Russia, the Nutcracker has become a winter cultural phenomenon, standing out among Christmas and New Year tradition thanks to its music and plot. From Moscow, correspondent Oleg Yasinski with the details.
The ballet Nutcracker, with music by the great Russian composer Pyotr Tchaikovsky, has become one of the most important and traditional symbols of the New Year season in Russia. It is also a clear example of the symbiosis of Russian and universal culture, as the plot of Hoffmann's fairy tale The Nutcracker and the Mouse King, the script of the ballet by Marius Petipa, and the music of Tchaikovsky are united in one great work.
We all dream of something. This ballet work is like dreaming of the beautiful. Well, maybe a prince, maybe something else. This is what we dream of when, being at home, it suddenly comes to life in front of us.
We made great efforts over the past year to bring the riches of Russian opera and ballet classics back to the stage, both on the main stage and on the news stage.
The Nutcracker premiered in December 1892 at the Mariinsky Theater in St. Petersburg. Its story has also unfolded at other famous theaters such as the Bolshoi in Moscow. There, several productions have been presented, each with its own unique interpretation, to become famous not only in Russia but all over the world.
To begin with, the most wonderful thing is that it is an encounter with childhood, whether we like it or not. Anyway, when we were children, our mother once took us to a puppet theater, a dramatic theater, or a ballet theater, and we saw the Nutcracker somehow, or someone gave us a book, and also, of course, the music of Tchaikovsky. I am absolutely sure of this and nothing, and no one will ever be able to cancel out this wonderful music.
Tchaikovsky's beautiful, bright, and melodic music, the children's dance, the waltz, the adagio, as well as the traditional New Year atmosphere, are for the Russian spectator the hope of a miracle, a magical transformation, a renewal for the future.
The ballet, The Nutcracker, is the most beautiful and magical thing that can happen to you before the new year. And, of course, the production of Grigorovich, our outstanding choreographer, is amazing, fascinating every moment.
The music is great, the experience is great. Vinogradova and Ovcharenko danced. They are so beautiful and danced so well. I like ballet very much. Every time I see it, I enjoy it to the fullest.
Modern adaptations for children often include simplified plots with interactive elements. Some theaters offer special explanatory or educational programs before the show so that children can learn more about ballet, music, and history. After all, the main thing is to create an atmosphere of magic and inspiration that children will remember for years to come.
Meanwhile, in Denmark, the Roskilde Cathedral is a unique sample of the evolution of the country's architecture. Let's see.
La Catedral de Roskilde es un ejemplo sobresaliente
The Cathedral of Roskilde is an outstanding example of the first important ecclesiastic building located in the north of Europe and had a deep influence on the diffusion of brick. It is located on the island of Zealand and is a large Gothic-style basilica with side aisles, twin spires, and a semicircular gallery inside. It is situated on a small hill overlooking the Roskilde Fjord, a narrow coastal sea inlet formed by glacial action. Around it, the structure of the medieval village is still visible, within which some period buildings and some beautiful houses from the 17th and 18th centuries are preserved. The cathedral dates back to 1170, and in the following centuries, chapels, porticos, and other structures were added to the original Romanesque style. As a result, the cathedral has become a summary of the history of European architecture in a single building.
Convertido en un resumen de la historia de la arquitectura europea en una misma edificación. El interior de la catedral mide 83 metros de largo. Las tres naves.
The interior of the cathedral is 83 meters long. The three naves as a whole are 24 meters wide, and the choir vault is 25 meters above the floor. One of the treasures it houses is a Renaissance altarpiece of carved wood of high artistic quality. It was made in Amberès, Flanders, around 1560. It is made of oak wood and almost completely covered with gold leaf. The organ has undergone several modifications and expansions, but there are also three other, somewhat smaller ones. The cathedral's royal monuments also commemorate an outstanding series of royal burials from the 10th century until the year 2000. 2000 when the most recent one took place. With only one exception since the Protestant Reformation, all Danish kings and queens have been buried in the cathedral, so their tombs also represent the evolution of monumental funerary art. Roskilde Cathedral was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1995.
La Catedral de Roskilde fue declarada Patrimonio de la Humanidad por la UNESCO en el año 1990.
Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on our social medias on X, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.